Clark came out and said that Kelsey Mitchell is the top priority for the Indiana Fever in this free agency. And that left some questions in the air about, wait a minute, how much of a priority is Lexie Hall? How much of a priority is Sophie Cunningham? Sophie Cunningham made a big announcement that includes Lexie Hall.
Sophie Cunningham announced that Lexie Hall is the next guest on her Live from the Bracket podcast. And what followed that announcement was a conversation that the Indiana Fever fan base needed to hear given all the uncertainty surrounding the roster heading into free agency. The situation the Fever are navigating is genuinely complicated. Caitlin Clark came out and said Kelsey Mitchell is the top priority for this offseason, which immediately raised the question of where that leaves Sophie and Lexie in the organizational hierarchy of free agency decisions. Sophie is an unrestricted free agent coming off a season-ending MCL tear, likely to be left unprotected in the expansion draft. She averaged 8.6 points, 3.5 rebounds, and 1.7 threes in 25 minutes per game before the injury, giving the Fever exactly the physical toughness and shooting they needed in a role player. Lexie is a restricted free agent, which means other teams can come after her with significant offers and Indiana can match. But if the Fever are spending significant money to bring Kelsey back, matching an aggressive offer for Lexie simultaneously creates the kind of cap arithmetic that gives front offices headaches during compressed off-season windows. Only Caitlin Clark, Aaliyah Boston, and Michaela Timpson are guaranteed to return, which means the Fever's core identity beyond its three locked pieces is an open question that the expansion draft, free agency negotiations, and the coaching staff's vision all have to resolve simultaneously in a compressed timeline. The Sophie and Lexie podcast appearance did not resolve the financial questions, but it answered the most important one about intentions. Both players want to stay, and the reasons they gave for wanting to stay reveal something specific and honest about what being a Caitlin Clark teammate actually does for a role player's career.
Appreciate it. So, Indiana Fever in a jam, okay? The money's getting tight. They can afford to keep Kelsey for one more season, but can they keep Kelsey and retain Sophie and Lexie to keep with Caitlin Clark as well is what an interesting thing is to see. Courtesy of Athlon Sports. Sophie Cunningham makes Indiana Fever announcement on Sunday. All right. Sophie Cunningham had some exciting news about Indiana Fever teammate Lexie Hall. Okay. Oh boy. Here it says, there is currently a lot of uncertainty surrounding Sophie Cunningham's future with the Indiana Fever. The 6'1" guard's contract with the Fever has ended, as she is now an unrestricted free agent ahead of her 8th season in the WNBA. And you also have to remember that Sophie Cunningham will likely be left unprotected in the expansion draft. So that is another key thing to pay attention to here as we kind of go forward. Sophie Cunningham is not going to be protected in the expansion draft, so keep that in mind. All right, here it says Cunningham joined the Fever in the offseason via multi-team trade deal.
Here's the situation. Sophie Cunningham is an
Lexie Hall's response to Sophie's question about how things have changed in Indiana since she arrived was the most revealing part of the entire conversation. She described going from a couple thousand people at games in her rookie year when the team won 5 games to sold-out arenas and national television and a complete organizational transformation. She described loving coming to the gym every day, loving the staff, loving her teammates, feeling genuinely grateful to be there. And that is the language of someone who has experienced both versions of professional basketball and understands clearly which one she is not willing to leave behind. She is not stupid about the specific economic reality of what being Caitlin Clark's teammate means for a role player's life. She knows that going to another team means going back to commercial flights and partial crowds and being a name that only hardcore fans recognize, rather than someone kids wear the jersey of in the stands. The jersey moment she mentioned, seeing kids in the stands wearing her number 10, is the specific image that communicates what the Caitlin Clark effect has done for the people around her. Because Lexie Hull's number 10 jersey was not something that was commercially significant before the Clark era arrived in Indiana. Sophie added her own perspective from the outside. She came from Phoenix, where she was just another rotation player, and in Indiana, she describes having fans who see the dirty work, who appreciate taking charges and defending and playing without the ball, who show up in the kind of numbers that make the appreciation feel real. That is a genuine quality of life statement about what it means to perform for a sold-out crowd that cares, rather than for a partial arena of people who are primarily there for a different reason. And both Sophie and Lexie identified it as something they do not want to give up, regardless of what the financial offers from other teams might look like.
Cunningham made an announcement, and we have to get into it, man, because this is interesting. I think we'll get some questions answered in this situation here by Sophie Cunningham potentially. And man, this is a big deal. The Indiana Fever have to figure out how to get these numbers right, because you can bring Kelsey back all you want. If you don't have the role players, if you don't somehow bring back Lexie Hull, Sophie Cunningham, it's gonna be tough.
The stylistic argument for keeping Lexie and Sophie over spending maximum resources on Kelsey Mitchell is the one that deserves to be taken seriously on competitive grounds rather than just loyalty grounds. Kelsey Mitchell is a ball-dominant scorer who needs touches to be effective. She requires possession volume and shot creation opportunities to generate the offensive output that justifies her contract value. And Caitlin Clark is a ball-dominant playmaker who also requires possession volume to run the offense that produces the team's best basketball. Two ball-dominant players on the same roster creates natural friction around shot distribution and possession usage that coaches can manage but cannot fully eliminate. And the friction is most visible in the moments when the game is closest and the decisions about who gets the ball matter most. Lexie and Sophie are off-ball players who thrive getting open looks created by Clark's gravity and passing. They do not need the ball in their hands to be effective. They do not need creation volume. They need space and positioning and the specific defensive attention that Clark draws to function at a level that helps the team win. That is the perfect supporting cast profile for a player like Clark, whose impact scales upward when she has reliable shooters on the floor and whose statistical output in playmaking specifically benefits from teammates who can execute in the spaces she creates rather than competing with her for those spaces. The financial reality is that the Fever probably cannot max Kelsey, bring back Lexie on a market deal, and retain Sophie as an unrestricted free agent unless some of them accept below-market terms. And the conversation on Sophie's podcast suggests that the teammates who most understand their role in the Clark ecosystem are the ones most likely to prioritize returning over chasing maximum compensation elsewhere.
Friends, on the squad is Lexie Hull, and this is where things get a bit interesting in regards to Lexie Hull in this whole situation. Here it says, Cunningham previously revealed that she considers Hull to be her bestie on the team. The two decided to reunite amid the WNBA offseason on Sunday. Cunningham announced that Hull is the next guest on her show, Live from the Bracket. Okay, this is a series that Sophie Cunningham has been doing during the women's NCAA tournament. So it appears that her and Lexie Hull are about to get together on this broadcast on Sophie Cunningham's podcast. And y'all know Sophie Cunningham touches all topics. So I'm sure this whole expansion situation, this whole free agency situation, Kelsey Mitchell, Caitlin Clark coming out and saying,
the public confirmation from both Sophie and Lexie that they want to stay in Indiana and want to stay alongside Caitlin Clark is the specific piece of information that puts to rest the narrative that Clark's teammates secretly resent her success, or are eager to leave the situation she has built around herself. That narrative has circulated since Clark's rookie year, advanced by people who interpreted every competitive friction and every misinterpreted sideline moment as evidence of a locker room that was privately hostile to the commercial reality Clark brought to the franchise. Sophie and Lexie just went on a podcast and said publicly, clearly, without hedging, that they love being there, that they appreciate what the crowds and the atmosphere and the team culture have become, and that they want to run it back, which is not the behavior of players who have been quietly miserable and waiting for an exit. The expansion draft reality adds complexity that the pure intentions conversation cannot resolve. Sophie being left unprotected means another team could select her before Indiana has any say in the matter, and the financial arithmetic of signing everyone the Fever want to retain simultaneously may simply not work under the cap structure even with the new CBA's expanded numbers. What the front office cannot afford to do is treat the Sophie and Lexie situation as resolved by their public desire to return without doing the actual organizational work of protecting those players from the expansion draft where possible, and making competitive contract offers when the free agency window opens. Desire to stay is the necessary precondition for retention negotiations. It is not the same as retention, and the Fever's off-season credibility will ultimately be judged by whether their organizational actions matched the public statements both the players and the franchise made about the value of keeping this core together around Caitlin Clark's prime years.
Took to Sophie Cunningham's Show Me Something podcast, and she addressed the truth about being a part of Caitlin Clark's team, and make no mistake about it,